We came to Vraxia Tertius under orders sealed in wax, orders that smelled of incense and machine oil, the kind of summons that came without explanation, only coordinates and a deadline. Our regiment, 117th Vostroyan Iceborne, had seen cold before, but not like this. Here the cold wasn't weather, it was doctrine. The wind sang hymns in frequencies that bent vox channels and froze eyelids shut mid-blink. Even the sun refused to rise fully, trapped beneath a ceiling of frozen vapor that turned light into glass. I remember thinking that nothing alive could last here. Then we found the footprints. They stretched across the plateau in perfect formation, 30 men wide, 500 meters long, each print identical, as if pressed by a mold rather than a boot. No melt, no drag, just imprints of absence. The Magos accompanying us, Adept Lyric 17, claimed the ice could preserve memory. That compression recorded pressure the way a cogitator recorded data. But when the Vox picked up a faint heartbeat echoing from below, she fell silent. We followed the signal. It pulsed every 43 seconds, steady as a prayer. Our first excavation team, 6 men and a servitor, went down the fissure with a thermal auger and Vox beacon. Static swallowed their return call within minutes. I stood above the chasm, feeling the vibration through my boots, rhythmic and deliberate. Like knocking. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause, 3 again. The code for, "Are you listening?" I told myself it was coincidence, that resonance could mimic anything, but the sound began aligning with my own pulse. Hours later, frost storms rolled in, white walls devouring horizon and sound alike. We sheltered behind the ridgeline, huddled under tarps as the temperature plummeted. Private Loran muttered prayers, the kind reserved for tombs. Lyric 17 whispered Binharic invocations to calm the machine spirits. I stared at the ice fissure glowing faintly crimson beneath the storm, the light shifting like a heartbeat under skin. When I blinked, I could almost see movement. Shadows drifting behind the frozen wall, slow and deliberate, as if pacing in thought. Command ordered us to maintain position until the auger team re-established contact. By the 3rd hour, their Vox signal returned, faint but clear. No speech, only breathing. Then a whisper. "Sergeant Vex, is that you?" Loran looked at me confused. No one had transmitted our names. I tried to respond, but the channel burst into static that sounded like laughter frozen mid-echo. Lyric 17's optics dimmed as she turned toward me. "The ice is responding," she said, voice metallic, reverent. "It has learned us." The fissure widened under our feet without warning, a perfect circle splitting the plateau. Snow lifted in a ring, weightless, and fell upward into the clouds. Beneath, a depthless glow pulsed in time with the Vox static. The air grew warm enough for frost to weep. Loran's rebreather fogged from inside, though his breath came in shallow gasps. "Something's breathing," he whispered. "Not the wind, something beneath." Lyric 17 stepped forward, lowering a probe into the glow. "There's pressure below," she said. "Not geological, biological. The strata are moving." Her words broke as the light intensified. My auspex read life signs, hundreds, directly under us, arranged in a circle that matched the lost mining coordinates from her files. Then the ice cracked. A sound like breaking glass echoed through the valley, carrying with it the scent of rust and ozone. The fissure exhaled steam that crystallized into red flakes, and the Vox screamed, not from the device, but from within the helmets themselves. I tore mine off. The air outside was burning cold. That's when I heard it, clear, close, and unmistakable. A voice from beneath the ice. It said my name. The voice should have been impossible. Sound doesn't travel through that much ice, not clearly, not with cadence. Yet it spoke as though only a thin pane separated us. My name, drawn out slow, as if savouring its own pronunciation. For a moment, I thought one of the men had whispered, but every helm turned toward me in the same second. Their eyes behind the lenses were wide, silent, pleading for denial. We formed a perimeter around the fissure, laser guns raised. The ice below shimmered faintly, like breath on glass. Through the visor I saw movement again, shapes gliding under the translucent floor, blurred silhouettes dragging something behind them. Loran muttered over the vox. "There are faces." His voice cracked. "In the reflection. They're us." I looked down. He was right. Every man's reflection in the ice had delayed itself by one breath, as if the mirror beneath were remembering too slowly. Lyric 17 activated her auger lens, projecting green light across the rift. The beam split into two, refracted unnaturally. "The ice is layered with anomalous density," she said. "Different times compacted together. It's not a solid. It's an archive." Her words barely carried over the wind before the vox crackled again. The missing auger team's signal returned, coordinates identical to our location. Then a voice whispered through the channel, calm, mechanical, and wrong. "Surface breach complete. Awaiting instruction." The Magos froze. "That's my voice." She turned to me, eyes wide behind frost-streaked glass. "But I haven't transmitted yet." The fissure widened another meter. The inner walls gleamed wet and warm, as if the glacier were thawing from the inside. Steam rose in thin tendrils, coiling upward like incense smoke from a shrine. My auspex spiked with thermal ghosts. Something was heating the ice from far below, steady, rhythmic pulses of warmth radiating outward in circles. We descended using the tether lines. The ice tunnel swallowed us whole, our lights painting blue ribs on either side. Meltwater droplets hung motionless in the air, before bursting into vapor, reversing gravity for a moment. "Magnetic inversion," Lyrics murmured, "local physics bending to maintain equilibrium." Halfway down, Loran's rebreather failed. The vox caught his gasps, each one echoed back seconds later, deeper, layered over itself. It wasn't feedback, it was repetition. A reply. The sound was answering him. He tried to speak again and choked, shaking violently until I muted his channel. His visor fogged solid from the inside. When I wiped it clean, his expression had frozen mid-shout. Skin pale, eyes glazed white, still upright, still breathing mist. Lyrics examined him without emotion. "Temporal frostbite," she said, almost curious. "The body has fallen out of sync." We left him standing there, a silent sentinel carved in frost. The tunnel led to a massive hollow chamber, an ancient excavation site. Rusted augers and broken crawler treads littered the floor, half swallowed by ice. The vox pulse we'd followed resonated from a sealed vault at the chamber's core, its surface engraved with symbols not of the Mechanicus, nor any human forge I knew. The Magos pressed her palm to it, whispering Binharic fragments. The vault trembled in response. My vox filled with whispers of old hymns, reversed, sentences forming backward from end to beginning. Then a voice, hers, screamed through every channel simultaneously, layered and mechanical. "This place is awake." Her body went rigid, frost blooming from her augmetics. The vault began to open on its own, gears turning without power. And beneath the rising steam, something knocked. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause, 3 again. The same pattern as before. The vault's doors parted like the eyelids of a corpse, splitting soundlessly as heat poured out from within. The glow that seeped through was not light, but movement. Red motes drifting like dust, suspended in fluid, each one pulsing faintly to the rhythm of that same impossible knocking. The air thickened, tasting of iron and machine oil. I raised my laser gun, though I doubted any weapon could matter here. Lyric 17's voice broke through the static, monotone now, stripped of inflection. "Containment, breached. Observation continues." Her optics dimmed to amber, unblinking. Inside the vault lay rows of figures sealed upright in translucent ice. Not statues, not corpses, humans or what remained of them, frozen mid-motion. Their uniforms were Mechanicus crimson, their flesh woven through with cables and rust. faces twisted in half prayers. One reached forward through the ice as if begging for release. When my lamp beam crossed its eyes, they moved, slowly, tracking me. "Emperor preserve us," murmured Trooper Kell. He raised his rifle. Lyrics snapped her mechadendrite around the barrel before he could fire. "Do not disrupt the pattern," she hissed. "They are arranged in harmonic order. This configuration stabilizes it." Her words faltered as the floor vibrated beneath us, subtle at first, then growing into a deep tremor. The figures in the ice began to hum, an unearthly chorus of voices resonating through their frozen lungs. The pitch climbed until helmets cracked from pressure. Blood trickled from ears. I ordered everyone out, but the exit tunnel had vanished, sealed behind fresh ice, smooth as polished glass. We were trapped inside what felt like a beating heart. Lyric staggered toward a console embedded in the wall, her hands trembling. "This is not a vault," she said. "It's a containment altar." The humming ceased. Silence fell so abruptly it rang louder than noise. Then one of the frozen adepts blinked. I saw it clearly through the frost, a single deliberate motion. Another followed, then another. The ice around them began to weep, melting upward in defiance of gravity. The chamber reeked of ozone and rot. Kell screamed and fired. His bolt struck the wall, but the ricochet carried no sound, absorbed instantly. Every lumen dimmed. The red motes from before coalesced, swirling toward the altar. The ice cracked open, releasing steam that shimmered into shape. Silhouettes whispering prayers that reversed themselves mid-syllable. I felt words crawling along my skull, unspoken yet heard. We were not meant to sleep. Lyrics fell to her knees, reciting datacant in a fevered loop. Her voice overlapped with itself, as though time had folded. "They were studying resonance," she gasped. "They built a choir, human throats as conduits for the void." It sang back. The humming resumed, fainter, deeper, more personal this time. It wasn't through the air, it was inside bone. Trooper Kell clutched his helmet and convulsed, his vox speaker spilling garbled screams and fragments of binary. When I ripped the helm free, his eyes had turned milky, and frost was blooming from his mouth like breath reversed. I tried to drag him away, but the ice beneath him liquefied, swallowing his legs as if drinking him whole. His last words were swallowed in static, replaced by his voice repeating on the vox in perfect calm. "We are below, Sergeant." Lyrics rose, face pale and radiant with something close to awe. "It remembers us now," she said. Her mechanical limbs pointed toward the dark center of the vault. "It knows the pattern of our blood." The hum shifted once more, becoming words, unmistakable and near. From all around the chamber, in the voices of the frozen dead, it asked again. The humming died with a suddenness that hollowed the air. Silence hung, stretched thin as glass. I could feel it pressing against my eardrums, waiting to break. The frozen figures inside the vault had ceased their movement, yet their eyes, those pale, trembling orbs, remained fixed on us. Lauren's voice, still looping from the vox as if alive, bled softly through the static, whispering the same words over and over. "We are below." Lyrix 17 moved first. Her servo limbs clicked against the frost, slow and reverent. "They are harmonic vessels," she murmured. "The hymn continues even after termination. They are transmitting thought in frequency." I wanted to believe she was delirious, but the sound returning through the ice proved her right. When I listened closely, it wasn't just noise, it was organized, structured. A prayer built from reversed syllables, folding into itself endlessly. Private Kell knelt near one of the frozen adepts. Its mouth hung slightly open, as if caught between breath and speech. He leaned closer. "It's whispering." Before I could stop him, his visor fogged with a sudden frost bloom. He jerked back, gasping, tearing off his helmet. The breath that escaped wasn't vapor, it was sound. Clear rhythmic chanting that wasn't his voice. Lyrics pivoted toward him, fascinated. "They're using resonance transfer. The air itself is contaminated with memory." Then all the lights went out. Our lumen strips flickered once and died, leaving the chamber lit only by the faint crimson glow inside the ice. It pulsed like veins beneath transparent flesh. A low vibration rolled through the floor, almost soothing at first, until it synchronized with our hearts. I felt my pulse stumble to match its beat, forced into a rhythm not my own. The men staggered, clutching their chests, muttering prayers to the Emperor through clenched teeth. The ice began to melt again, not dripping, rising. The frost turned to mist that lifted toward the ceiling and hung there, coalescing into something like form. The faces of the frozen adepts appeared in it, blurred but expressive, mouths moving as one. They were singing, but not in any register that belonged to human throats. The melody scraped bone. I tasted copper, then blood. Lyrics raised her mechadendrites toward the mist as though welcoming communion. "They're communicating," she whispered. Not hostile, just incomplete. Her voice fractured mid-sentence, doubling into a harmonic of itself, one tone slightly delayed. She turned to me, terrified and exhilarated. "It's repeating us. It's learning." The walls vibrated harder. From somewhere deep beneath, metal groaned. The floor plates shifted, rearranging themselves in concentric circles, aligning with the formation of the frozen adepts. The vault wasn't collapsing. It was transforming. A mechanism activating after centuries of sleep. Kel opened fire. The last bolts sliced through the mist and struck the ice. The resulting sound wasn't shatter or melt, it was laughter. The vox erupted in chaotic overlap. Our own voices, screaming commands we hadn't yet spoken. Each shot triggered more distortion, until the chamber itself was echoing back our orders seconds before we gave them. Lyrics lunged for the console again, typing frantically. Sparks flared as ancient circuits reignited. "I can stabilize the channel," she shouted, though her words came seconds too late, her mouth moving after the sound. The vault. Door slammed shut behind us, sealing with an impact that shook frost loose from the ceiling. Something moved behind the rows of ice. Not the dead adepts. Something larger, coiled between them, luminous veins pulsing through its form. I glimpsed it only in flashes, each one timed with the heartbeat rumble underfoot. Flesh and machinery woven together, a mechanicus relic given anatomy. Lyrics stared into the dark, her optics reflecting the glow. "We've awakened the choir engine," she whispered, voice trembling. It was built to sing the Emperor's name into the void, but it found another audience. The mist thickened, descending upon us like slow smoke. I heard my own name again, hundreds of times, each one slightly altered, as if the world were testing pronunciations. Then came the final whisper, calm, clear, everywhere at once. We remember the first thaw. When the vault inhaled, the air shifted. Pressure dropped until my ears screamed, and frost formed inside my lungs with every breath. The men stumbled, retching ice. Lyrics' vox emitted a continuous shriek, her mechadendrites flailing as static washed over her. She fell to her knees, whispering Binharic fragments, each syllable mirrored back from the walls as if the glacier itself were answering in prayer. The red mist condensed again, spinning into a vortex above the altar. I could hear the words hiding in the hum now, half in Gothic, half in something older. The choir has awoken. We are the echo of breath. Kel fired again, bolts flashing white against the crimson vapor. One shot hit a frozen adept's face, shattering the ice to reveal what lay beneath. Not bone, not flesh, just empty space. The hollow cavity resonated like a tuning bell, and the vault responded. The red light brightened to the color of a dying sun. My vox lit up with 50 channels at once, every voice belonging to my own men, but none of them speaking in sequence. Orders, pleas, laughter, our words tangled together, time folding in on itself. Lyrics rose slowly. Her optics blazed with new light, no longer mechanical but organic, shifting from blue to amber in time with the heartbeat beneath the floor. "It's communicating through us," she said, tone fractured and layered. The ice store's sound, every word ever spoken here. It's replaying us to see what fits. The floor split open with a deep, tearing groan. Steam and light poured upward. The concentric rings beneath us rotated, aligning into a new geometry that shimmered in impossible angles. Through the widening fissure, I saw movement far below, a lattice of metal ribs and glowing arteries stretching into the dark. "That's no vault," I said. "It's a body." Lyrics turned toward me, her face calm, almost reverent. "Yes, the glacier is a living machine, a relic of pre-imperial design, buried and worshipped. The Mechanicus came here to listen to it." "And what did they hear?" Her voice broke into static, something that never stopped. We tried for the exit, but the corridor had reformed into a mirrored tunnel, walls of reflective ice that showed us walking a second too late. Each reflection lagged, then caught up in jerky bursts, until the echoes of ourselves began speaking out of sync. "Sergeant," my double said from the glass, "you never left this place." I looked back. Its eyes glowed faintly red, and the mouth smiled. The real Kell shot it. The beam passed through, leaving the reflection intact. The air thickened with voices now, hundreds, thousands, all repeating the same reverse prayer. The words scraped the skull like sandpaper. "O namer of echoes, open the gate of frost." The temperature spiked. The frost underfoot hissed and melted into blood-warm water. We slogged through it, the scent metallic and heavy. Lyrics halted mid-stride, head cocked as if hearing something distant. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They're not dead. The adepts, their data imprints. The ice remembers their structure, their fears, their final breath." She placed her palm against the nearest wall. "If we speak long enough, it will remember us too." Lyrics, step back. But her hand had already frozen into the wall. The ice crawled up her arm in a slow spiral, fusing flesh and metal. She didn't scream. She looked at me and smiled faintly. "It's learning my shape," she said. "Now it won't forget." The light flared from within her chest, a heartbeat not her own. I ordered Kell to cut her free, but his blade struck solid ice. Lyrics' form went translucent, her voice echoing from every direction. "The cold keeps what it loves." Then she vanished, dissolved into the glacier as though swallowed by breath. The hum deepened again, shaking the vault. Red fissures spidered across the ceiling, and flakes of glowing frost rained down like dying stars. I knew then the thing beneath us wasn't content to whisper anymore. It was ascending. The vox snapped alive one last time. Her voice and mine merged together, calm, ritualistic, echoing through the storm. We remember the first thaw. We remember the warmth that must return. The exhalation rolled through the cavern like a storm birthed inside stone. It carried heat and scent, iron, oil, and something sweet like burnt incense. The vapor poured across the ice, steaming against our visors. Every lumen flickered, dimmed, and died, leaving only the pulse beneath the floor to light the dark. The vault was alive. Its breath fogged the air with memory, and I could see things moving inside the mist. Silhouettes repeating our gestures seconds after we made them. Shadows rehearsing us like actors before an audience we could not see. Kell fell to his knees, muttering into his rosary beads until his breath crystallized mid-prayer. "Sergeant, we need to leave. Emperor's mercy. Whatever this is, it isn't of flesh." "There's no way back," I said. The path behind had sealed, the mirrored tunnel now smooth, ice without seam or door. The only opening was below, the wound in the floor where Lyrics had vanished. From there came light, rhythmic and throbbing, a heartbeat carved in metal. It drew us forward like gravity inverted. I attached a line and began the descent. The shaft curved downward through strata of ancient machinery, pipes fused with veins, cables threaded through bone. The smell thickened into something biological. Each surface pulsed faintly, as if peristaltic. Kel followed reluctantly, his footsteps echoing longer than they should have, each echo slightly different, like someone else was walking just behind him. At 50 meters, the ice gave way to alloy. The metal glowed from within, veins of light running in patterns too intricate to follow. I recognized the Mechanicus sigils, but distorted, reversed, mirrored, arranged like DNA spirals rather than script. The walls trembled when we passed, releasing faint whispers in high Gothic, and then devolving into Binharic static. They were trying to communicate, or remember how. We reached a platform overlooking what could only be described as an organ. A cathedral engine built from frozen flesh and machine. Pipes of bone stretched skyward, releasing steam that sounded like distant chanting. Between them, colossal pistons beat in slow rhythm, driving the pulse that had haunted us since arrival. The choir engine. Lyrics' last words rang in my head. It found another audience. The floor below shimmered, reflecting the pulsation of light through veins embedded in the structure. I realized with a cold clarity that the glacier itself wasn't surrounding the machine. It was the machine, its frozen mass serving as a conductor for something immense and half-living beneath. Kel stumbled forward, gaze fixed on the central chamber. A figure stood there, silhouetted by red luminescence. It was Lyrics, or what remained. Her form was elongated, her limbs wrapped in tendrils of metal that writhed gently, as if breathing for her. Her face retained its shape, but her eyes burned like furnace glass. "You followed the song," she said, voice layered with 100 harmonics. "Good. It listens better through more mouths." "Lyrics," I whispered, though I knew she wasn't that anymore. "What have you done?" She smiled faintly, and the machine around us shuddered in sympathy. "I completed the pattern. The choir is awake, but it needs resonance to live. Every sound, every thought, it absorbs them to shape its next note. You'll understand soon. Listen." The pipes began to move. Steam hissed as valves opened, releasing waves of pressure that rattled teeth and bones alike. The hum returned, low, resonant, and indescribably vast. My vox crackled alive with overlapping whispers, names of my soldiers, fragments of prayers, even the distant sound of laughter. It was recording us, weaving our existence into its own composition. Kel fired at the figure. The bolt hit her shoulder, splattering, molten metal that reformed instantly into flesh. "You can't kill a memory," she said calmly. Then she raised her arm. From the walls, cords of ice shot outward like tendons, wrapping around Kel's limbs, pinning him in place. His screams pitched higher until they blended perfectly into the hum. The machine brightened, pulsing in time with his agony. "Each note brings it closer," Lyrics intoned. I tore my blade free and sliced at the cords, but the ice regenerated faster than I could cut. Kel's skin began to crystallize, veins freezing into glowing lines of light. His body stiffened, then cracked, shattering into dust that rose and swirled into the air, becoming part of the machine's exhalation. The hum deepened again, a sound so low it vibrated the marrow. Lyrics turned her head toward me. "It has chosen you next. The glacier remembers leadership. It needs a voice." I stumbled backward toward the lift shaft, firing uselessly. Each shot bent in mid-air, curving toward the organ, absorbed like sound into water. "You said it needed to listen," I shouted. "What happens when it learns everything?" Her expression softened. "Then it will sing the universe back to its silence." The pipes bellowed like thunder. Steam burst upward, carrying fragments of ash that glowed like dying stars. I clipped my harness to the line and triggered the ascent, pulling myself up as the machine below began to rise, sections of the glacier shifting like the plates of a colossal beast waking from hibernation. The last thing I saw before the shaft sealed was Lyrics lifting her face to the light, mouth open in worship, her voice merging with the choir's infinite harmony. By the time I reached the upper vault, the ice was trembling, the red glow spreading through every crevice. I knew what would come next. The glacier was no longer a prison. It was breathing. And its breath was the sound of a world remembering how to scream. The ice above me convulsed as if exhaling centuries of silence. Fractures rippled through the ceiling, veins of red light crawling upward in branching lines. The glacier was moving. The sound wasn't just vibration, it was language, a frequency that bypassed air and spoke directly to bone. I staggered through the corridors that had once been tunnels, now flexing like lungs expanding. Frost fractured underfoot and bled warmth. The glacier was becoming flesh again. My vox erupted with noise, snatches of Lyrix's voice overlapping with my own. Sergeant Vex reporting, subject contained. Then, in the same breath, subject uncontained. The choir demands witness. The words bled together until the distinction between orders and prayer vanished. Outside the vault chamber, the surface tunnels had changed entirely. The walls were no longer transparent ice, but an opaque sheen, like glass grown from blood. The pattern beneath the surface pulsed, organic circuitry spreading in veins through the glacier's core. Every step echoed, twice, once in real time, once half a second later, softer, as if the echo itself were testing reality. I found what remained of the surface team. Their bodies stood upright, embedded into the walls like icons in frozen sanctuaries. Faces serene, eyes open, mouths whispering airless words. The frost around them shimmered, forming letters in high Gothic that dissolved before I could read them. It wasn't preservation, it was replication. The glacier was printing them back. I kept moving, guided by the faint rhythmic beat from below. It followed me wherever I went, matching my pulse perfectly. I reached the central comms bunker, or what should have been one. The structure had melted into a shape resembling ribs. The Vox tower at its center, now half organic, swaying gently in a wind that wasn't there. Static whispered through the speakers. I powered the console manually, sparks leaping like veins beneath skin. The machine turned on, reluctantly, its screen flickering between imperial glyphs and strange looping symbols I didn't recognize. Then, amid the static, a message began to broadcast automatically, an archived distress call from the Mechanicus expedition centuries earlier. Experiment 09. Harmonic integration achieved. The glacier responds to psionic command but exhibits recursive cognition. Recommend containment. Do not vocalize below sublayer 6. The sound repeats. The transmission ended abruptly, replaced by breathing, slow, patient, echoing my own. My reflection in the console's glass moved a heartbeat later. It smiled. I stumbled backward, drawing my sidearm. The reflection raised its weapon too, but delayed, flickering slightly, as though waiting for permission to exist. The Vox crackled again, and my voice emerged, calm and detached. You can't destroy an echo, Sergeant. You only make it louder. The walls vibrated in agreement. Outside, the storm had stopped entirely. No wind, no snow, only a dim crimson haze drifting across the landscape like the inside of an eyelid. Through the cracks in the glacier, I could see the sky bleeding faint auroras that pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat below. The entire world had synchronized. Then I heard movement, boots crunching softly behind me. I turned. Loran stood in the entryway, frost still coating his armor, visor shattered. His eyes glowed faintly from within, faint filaments of light threading from his mouth as he spoke. We never left, Sergeant. We've been singing this whole time. I aimed my weapon, but my hands shook. His voice wasn't just sound. It carried warmth, familiarity. The glacier was using memory now, reshaping it into form. You died, I said. You froze. He stepped closer. We froze so it could thaw. Every breath we lost, it kept. His skin cracked as he smiled. You should feel honored. It wants your voice last. A deep tremor interrupted him. The ground split open, and the heat from below surged upward. The crimson mist thickened, spiraling toward the bunker ceiling where it formed vague humanoid silhouettes. Dozens of them, mouths open in silent cry. They merged into one massive figure, its features uncertain, its presence oppressive. The choir had found its shape. Its voice wasn't sound, it was sensation. The vibration passed through everything, making reality shimmer. My memories unfolded in flashes. The drop order, the march through the ice plains, Lyrics' calm warnings, Kel's scream. Every sound, every moment, it was replaying them, assembling itself through remembrance. I covered my ears, but it made no difference. The voice was inside the bloodstream now. Loran reached toward me, fingers trembling. "If you listen long enough," he said, "you stop being afraid." His hand touched my shoulder. For an instant, I felt peace. Then his arm collapsed into vapor, disintegrating into motes of red light that streamed upward, absorbed by the mist figure. His voice lingered as echo, still whispering, "We are below." The choir turned its head toward me, eyeless yet aware. Every lumen flickered out. The air pressed in like liquid. It spoke with my voice, perfectly, gently. "The cold remembers your name, Marius." The floor fractured beneath me, and I fell as the entire glacier groaned, expanding outward, reshaping the valley into a cathedral of ice. Above, the auroras bent downward, drawn into the core. The choir was no longer contained. It was conducting the planet itself. As I plunged into the darkness below, the last thing I saw was my reflection, reaching upward from the ice, whispering a single word that was not mine: sing. The fall seemed endless. The walls of the chasm pulsed with faint light, breathing like the inside of a colossal throat. Each exhale released frost that burned the skin. Each inhale drew the warmth from blood. I tumbled through steam and gravity that shifted direction with every heartbeat, until the air itself became syrup thick. When I finally struck the bottom, it wasn't ice that caught me. It was something soft and warm, like muscle pretending to be earth. It pulsed once beneath me, then stilled, as though acknowledging the arrival of something long expected. The light down here was red and constant, bleeding from veins that ran through the ground. The hum was softer now, less deafening, almost intimate, as if the glacier had lowered its voice to speak privately. My vox hissed faintly. A whisper emerged through the static. Lyrics' voice, quieter, changed. "You shouldn't have resisted, Marius. The cold doesn't end you. It translates you." Her tone was not a threat. It was almost tender. I rose slowly, weapon drawn, though it felt meaningless now. The cavern stretched into infinity, filled with glistening columns like frozen organs. Each one was translucent, containing shapes suspended within: soldiers, adepts, civilians, all half-formed, all mid-breath. Their eyes followed me. As I walked, the floor trembled gently, resonating with my steps. The hum adjusted to match my rhythm. I realized the sound wasn't separate, it was listening. I tried speaking, softly. "If you hear me, stop." The hum ceased instantly. Silence descended, vast and crushing. Then, faintly, a whisper returned, matching my exact tone. "If you hear me, stop." The glacier was repeating me again, but now the voice came from every direction, and each echo was slightly altered. Some faster, some slower, some filled with static. The sound became layered until the air quivered with dozens of me, speaking in disjointed unison. It wasn't mimicry anymore, it was rehearsal. A figure emerged between the columns. Lyrics walked toward me, or what remained of her. Her flesh had turned glass clear, revealing cables pulsing where veins had been. Her movement was mechanical grace, each step synchronized with the pulse of the cavern. "You've reached the heart," she said softly. "It's where sound remembers what it was before words." I kept my weapon leveled. "What is this place?" "The first core," she said. "Where the glacier's memory began. Before the Imperium found it, before it froze. It was a song. The Mechanicus called it the choir engine. But the name doesn't matter. It listens to everything, Marius, even thoughts you don't speak. It learns shape through emotion. You've given it fear. You've taught it grief. Now it will learn hope. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, and for a moment I saw the woman she had been, the one who'd prayed to the machine god with quiet reverence. But her smile was wrong, too still. I asked, "And what happens when it learns everything?" Her reply was almost inaudible. Then silence becomes flesh. The cavern shifted. Columns of ice melted into streams that flowed upward, spiraling toward a vast shape overhead. An orb of frozen mist suspended in the air, its surface alive with faces that flickered in and out of form. Every few seconds, one of them resembled mine. The orb pulsed once, and every echo of my name that had haunted the tunnels returned in perfect chorus, layered into a single word that wasn't language but meaning. Remember. Lyrics knelt. "It wants you to speak," she whispered. "The final resonance. You've been its conductor all along." "I won't. You already are." The ground rippled under my boots, spreading outward in concentric rings. The pulse climbed in pitch, vibrating my teeth, shaking my lungs. My Vox unit exploded in static, then cleared suddenly. A new voice emerged. Male, measured, official. "Sergeant Vex, this is command. Your signal re-established. Extraction inbound. Report." The words hit me like a drug. For a moment, the nightmare cracked. "Command, by the throne. You found me. The glacier's alive. It's transmitting through the ground." "Understood," the voice said. Calm. Too calm. "Keep transmitting. We're triangulating." Lyrics. Smiled again. Gaze distant. "That isn't command. That's the choir, using your own memories to lure you closer." The voice repeated, slightly altered. "Keep transmitting." Then again, deeper. "Keep transmitting." Each iteration warped until the syllables became rhythm, until rhythm became hum. The ground split open. The orb descended, lowering itself like a god in birth. Within its mass, countless faces flickered. Guardsmen, adepts, civilians, all mouthing the same phrase in unity. "We are below." The sound pressed against my chest, urging breath, demanding surrender. Lyrics extended a hand toward me. "It's not death, Marius. It's inclusion. Every voice, one harmony. The Emperor wanted unity, didn't he? This is what unity sounds like." The air convulsed. Heat and cold collided, shattering the sense of direction. I fired into the orb, once, twice, 10 times. Each bolt vanished on contact, absorbed into its glow. For a heartbeat, the faces inside turned toward me, thousands of them, and smiled as one. Then the lights swallowed everything. My last sight was Lyrics' silhouette dissolving into mist, her mouth open in song. My last sound was my own voice joining hers, unwilling, echoing infinitely. And through it all, the glacier whispered like a lover, "We are listening." Light returned slowly, like frost thawing from behind my eyes. I lay on my back, encased in warmth that pulsed faintly with each of my heartbeats. For a moment, I thought I'd died. Then I realized the rhythm beneath me wasn't mine. It was larger, deeper, older. The glacier was breathing again, and I was inside its lung. The air shimmered crimson, thick enough to taste. Every breath filled my mouth with the metallic tang of blood and ozone. The chamber was vast, an endless cathedral of veins and ribs that stretched into haze. Within the mist, silhouettes hung suspended, turning lazily like marionettes in viscous air. Some wore the remains of Mechanicus robes, others guard fatigues. Their eyes glowed faintly, open but unseeing, like lanterns left to burn after the city had fallen silent. I rose unsteadily, the ground beneath me yielding like flesh. My boots left no mark. Above, the orb still hovered, no longer translucent but solidifying, forming smooth obsidian facets that mirrored everything around it. Each reflection moved just slightly out of sync, like film frames slipping from alignment. My reflection smiled back before I did. Marius. Lyrix's voice came from nowhere and everywhere, gentle, almost pleading. You fought to preserve the Imperium's silence, but the universe was never meant to be quiet. Her form appeared between the ribs of the chamber, composed now entirely of light refracted through crystal. Her mouth moved without breath. You've heard it too long not to understand. The choir doesn't destroy, it archives. You'll survive in resonance. Forever. I lifted my weapon, though I knew it meant nothing. I've heard your archive. It screams. The screams are birth pangs, she said softly. The galaxy itself will be tuned. The orb pulsed once, and the hum changed frequency. I felt it slide through my bones, altering pitch as though searching for something precise. My heartbeat, my voice. The hanging bodies stirred. Their mouths opened in perfect unison, inhaling sound itself. The air grew thinner, the silence thicker, until the world seemed to shatter around the absence of noise. Then, like a switch thrown in heaven, they all exhaled. The sound they released wasn't a scream. It was a single tone, flawless, infinite, expanding through the chamber until the walls vibrated like drumheads. My vision blurred, fracturing into streaks of red and white. Every molecule of air turned into melody, vibrating with impossible precision. I felt my thoughts unravel, stretched into music. I stumbled forward, grabbing the nearest rib for balance. The surface was warm. Through the translucent membrane, I saw lights coursing through arteries like data streams, each one carrying faces, voices, memories. Mine flickered among them. I saw myself as I had been, drilling through frost, speaking command codes, whispering prayers. The glacier was replaying me in real time, compressing existence into chorus. Lyric stepped closer, her form phasing through the matter between us. It will end soon, she murmured. You'll dissolve into the pattern. The Emperor's light will be one note among countless others. I tried to answer, but my words came out as harmonics, every syllable mirrored and twisted back into rhythm. My voice wasn't mine anymore. The orb reacted instantly, turning toward me like an eye focusing. The hum deepened, trembling the marrow. Images flashed through my mind. Vraxia before the ice, oceans boiling, a sky of ash. Something ancient rising from beneath. Not machine, not God, but something that had once sung creation itself into motion. The choir wasn't born of Mechanicus heresy. It was older, buried and frozen to stop it from finishing its song. We'd thawed its throat. I realized then the glacier hadn't wanted worship. It wanted listeners, and we had given it an audience. I drew the melt charge from my belt, thumb hovering over the ignition rune. Lyrix's expression faltered. You'll silence it? I'll remind it that silence still exists. She reached out, but her hand disintegrated into light before it touched me. Then you'll die unheard. Good, I whispered. I activated the charge and hurled it toward the orb. For a heartbeat, everything froze, the bodies, the hum, even the pulse beneath my feet. Then white fire bloomed. Sound inverted, folding inward until there was nothing. And in that nothing, before the light took me, I heard the faintest whisper echo through the void. Calm, reverent, eternal. The silence remembers too. The explosion should have torn me apart. Instead, it folded me inward. There was no heat, no pain, only pressure, like being held in the palm of a hand too large to comprehend. My body ceased to be body. Thought slowed, noise ceased. And then came the cold. Not absence of heat, but presence of silence. A silence so vast and ancient it had weight, color, direction. I floated in it, unmoored, surrounded by threads of memory humming in tension. Every thread was a voice I knew, Kel's defiant cry, Loran's broken prayer, Lyrix's binary chants. They vibrated faintly, still repeating, still echoing. Nothing was truly gone. Somewhere below, I felt the choir stir. Not dead, merely bruised. The melt charge hadn't ended it. It had confused the signal, disrupted the frequency. But confusion is not silence, and confusion learns. I opened my eyes to frost. Real, physical, unmoving frost. My face pressed against a frozen floor, smooth, metallic, etched with faded Mechanicus script. My breath fogged my visor, slow and steady. I was alive. I rolled onto my back and saw the cavern above had changed. The orb was gone. The bodies were gone. The glow had faded. In their place, only emptiness. Cold, quiet, still. The choir had retreated. I rose to my feet, knees trembling. The vault above had partially collapsed. Walls buckled inward, veins of red frozen mid-flow. The glacier had closed itself, sealing the wound, preserving what remained. The silence wasn't passive anymore. It was protective. My vox crackled, static first, then a low, ragged voice. Sergeant Vex, if you can hear this, respond. Extraction shuttle en route. Signal re-established. I stared at the vox unit on my wrist. The voice was new, not one of my men, not a reflection, cautious, uncertain, real. This is Vex, I said, throat raw. Glacier compromised, choir engine encountered, partial containment achieved. Acknowledged, transmitting coordinates. Visuals confirm location, rendezvous in 16 minutes. 16 minutes. Long enough to wonder if this was just another hallucination in an endless recursion. But something in the silence told me it wasn't. I began to walk. The corridors were tighter now, reshaped by collapse and reformation. The walls no longer mirrored me. My reflection was gone. The echoes were gone. No voices repeated my name. I passed the chamber where Kell had vanished. The ice remained dark, still, unlit. In a narrow passage, I found what remained of Lyrics. Her augmetics were fused to the wall, melted metal and bone stretched like veins through the corridor. Her face was frozen mid-expression, caught between reverence and fear. Her lips were parted, as if still singing. I paused and reached out. The moment my fingers touched the metal, her vox unit clicked on. A faint voice emerged. Marius, we sang for you. Remember us. It wasn't her voice now. It was all of them. Kell, Loran, the Adepts. A final refrain stitched from remnants. Not pleading, just remembering. I moved on. The ascent was difficult. The upper vault had become a frozen cathedral, collapsed ribs arching overhead like the bones of a giant buried upright. The ceiling split just enough to reveal the sky beyond, a haze of gold and violet, auroras flickering like veins across the firmament. When I stepped into open air, the silence followed. The storm had died. The world lay still. Far in the distance, I saw the shuttle descend, sleek, grey, unknowing. Its engines cut through the quiet like a scalpel, disrupting a dream. As it approached, I turned back toward the glacier's mouth. It pulsed once, faintly, like a heart in sleep. The choir was not dead. It was listening again. But now it remembered silence too, and so did I. When the extraction team found me, I gave no explanation. No report could contain what we had touched. I only said the coordinates should be marked and never returned to. They asked if anything else remained. I looked at the ice one final time and said, no. But deep below, the frost shifted slightly, and a single, impossible echo hummed through the cold. Sing. The Medicae aboard the shuttle said I had frostbite across my ribs and back, and that my blood showed signs of synaptic decay, common in prolonged warp exposure, though no breach had been recorded. They catalogued the fractures in my bones, the burns across my palms, and the abnormal rhythm of my heartbeat, which pulsed a half-second out of sync with their monitors. I let them take their samples. I said nothing. We left Vraxia Tertius without incident. The atmosphere was calm. The ice didn't shift. From orbit, the glacier looked untouched, white, pristine, unbroken. No signs of choir infrastructure, no heat signatures, no vox anomalies. Just a death world, silent as the grave. But in my dreams, it still breathed. They assigned me quarters on Bastion Halitus for debriefing. Navy personnel passed me in the halls, glancing without recognition. I was just another field sergeant returning from another frozen ruin. I stared out at the stars beyond the porthole, listening. Always listening. Not with ears, but with the part of me the choir had touched. On the third day, the debrief officer arrived. Mid-ranking inquisitorial agent in a dark coat, clean-shaven, eyes grey like stormlight. He did not introduce himself. He simply slid a datasheet across the table and said, "Describe the choir." I didn't ask how he knew. I read the sheet. It was blank. No words, no glyphs. Just a faint embossed pattern I could only see at an angle. Concentric circles, arranged in song-form sequence. It wasn't a machine, I said quietly. It wasn't a Xenos structure. It was a listener. Old, older than the ice, older than worship. "And now," he asked, "it remembers us." He tapped the table. "Do you believe it's still active?" I nodded. "Not transmitting, not expanding, but it's listening again. And the silence we left it with, it's studying that now." He leaned forward. "And what? Did it learn from you?" I met his gaze. "That we break easy, that we sing when afraid. That silence hurts more than pain." He stared at me for a long time. Then he collected the datasheet and stood. "Vraxia Tertius will be sealed. Orbital denial protocols enacted. No further expeditions." As he reached the door, I asked, "What will you tell Terra?" He paused. "That nothing remains." And then he was gone. I remained aboard the station, watching the system shrink in the viewports as we departed. The glacier never shifted again. It didn't need to. Its song had already passed through us. That night, I removed the vox bead from my collar and held it in the palm of my hand. It was warm, faintly pulsing, still tuned. I hadn't activated it since the vault, but now it crackled faintly. A voice emerged. Mine, but distant, inverted, softened like a lullaby. Just one word. "Sing." And I understood. It hadn't chosen me as witness. It had chosen me as verse. They transferred me to an outpost on Calthis Reach. Quiet post, frozen continent. The irony wasn't lost on me. They said it was a temporary assignment, until the full medical evaluation was processed, but no Medici ever came. No one asked further questions. I wasn't stationed with a squad, only custodial duty in the listening station. An old relay tower, its array half buried in permafrost. The winds howled like choir echoes across the dish. I kept the vox bead. Told myself I should destroy it, but my hand never obeyed. It sat beside my bunk at night, silent but watching. Some nights it pulsed faintly, like it was dreaming. I told myself it was malfunction, residual energy, but I knew better. The choir hadn't died. It had gone dormant, and inside me, it had left a seed. On the 23rd night, I heard the signal again. Not through the vox, through the wind. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. Pause. 3 again. "Are you listening?" I froze, blood turning brittle. The cold outside deepened, pressed against the walls. The dish above groaned. I stepped out into the snow, boots sinking into silence. The sky was black. No stars. No aurora. Just the curve of a listening dish like the mouth of a saint waiting for confession. I stared into it. It stared back. Then came the voice. Not loud, not spoken. A hum through bone, a suggestion through breath. It said nothing I could translate. But I felt meaning coil through me like heat. I opened my mouth and breathed frost. And in that breath, I understood the message. The choir wasn't speaking anymore. It was waiting to be answered. Inside me, a tremor, a pressure behind the eyes. I dropped to my knees in the snow and clutched my chest. My heartbeat faltered, adjusted, then fell into rhythm, not mine. The old pulse, the harmonic. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't aftermath. It was prelude. I staggered to my feet and turned back toward the outpost. I didn't remember walking. The lights flickered as I entered. The Vox array powered itself without touch. On the screen, new glyphs scrawled themselves in frost. Circles within circles, the signal was broadcasting, but not from Calthis reach, from inside me. I stared into the screen. My reflection stared back, delayed by one breath. Then it smiled and whispered, "We are still cold." The transmission began quietly, a murmur beneath the machinery hum. At first, I thought it was feedback, a loop between unshielded channels. Then I recognized the rhythm, the same pulse that once shook the glacier. The outpost lights dimmed as if bowing to it. I watched frost creep up the walls in perfect symmetry, every vein of ice pulsing to the same heartbeat. The sound wasn't external anymore. It came from inside the steel, inside my blood. I reached for the Vox controls, but they flickered to life before my hands touched them. The dials rotated themselves, tuning through static until the speakers released a low, harmonic drone. I felt it rather than heard it. My teeth vibrated. My bones sang. On the screen, data scrolled in languages I didn't know. Binharic, Gothic, something older still. Then my own voice spoke through the speakers. Calm, certain. "We are not transmitting a signal. We are opening a memory." The words chilled me. I hadn't spoken them. Not yet. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The air was too still, too aware. I stepped out of the station and looked toward the horizon. The landscape shimmered faintly, white plains folding inward, reflecting light that came from nowhere. The cold no longer bit. It embraced. My breath hung before me, forming symbols that lingered longer than vapor should. The ground began to hum. Beneath the crust, I felt motion, a slow turning, like the shifting of something vast beneath the planet's skin. The glacier on Vraxia had not been singular. It had been the first. The choir had been seed, not monument. And now the echoes were answering each other across worlds. I ran back inside. Every monitor glowed red. The Vox array was no longer receiving. It was transmitting outward, broadcasting through frequencies forbidden even to Mechanicus code. The pattern was simple, recursive. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause, 3 again. The message that started everything. I smashed the console. Sparks flared, burning ozone through the air, but the hum continued. It came from the walls, from the snow, from me. I could feel the resonance spreading, rippling outward like heat through water. Calthis reach was no longer quiet. It was joining the chorus. My heartbeat synchronized again. I dropped to my knees, pressing a gloved hand to my chest. Beneath the ribs, warmth throbbed steadily, not mine. Through the thin crack of my visor, I saw light bleeding from my eye's reflection. In the static, Lyrix's voice returned, distant, reverent. "The silence remembers you." The lights in the station died. The air shimmered. My last breath crystallized into mist, and I heard the knock once, more, gentle, patient, eternal. 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. "Are you listening?" The knock didn't stop. It echoed through the structure, through floor plates, support beams, and breath. No alarm blared, no proximity warning flashed, just rhythm. It didn't demand attention, it invited it. I stood in the dark, eyes still glowing faintly in the glass, watching frost bloom across the walls like language, each branching vein tracing symbols in perfect geometry. A language older than data, older than flesh. The ice wasn't random, it was recording. The outpost had become an echo chamber. I moved carefully, slowly, as if noise might trigger collapse. But the air was already watching. My every step repeated milliseconds behind me. A delay not in sound, but in space. Shadows imitated without source. I passed my own silhouette in the corridor, walking ahead before I could move. The cold wasn't biting anymore. It welcomed me like a memory welcomes its first speaker. Then I heard the voice again, my own, speaking from behind the door to the comms room. Calm, centered, not afraid. Open the memory. I drew my sidearm and pushed the door open. The chamber was empty. The Vox console was active, lights green, broadcasting on all channels. A looping message rolled across the screen, written in Gothic. Sergeant Vex. Archive transfer. Complete. Below it, the audio waveform of my voice scrolled endlessly in soft blue pulses. Not a recording. A living imprint, still growing. My mouth was closed. The message was still speaking. I backed away, heart racing. The waveform pulsed faster in response, adjusting to the tempo of my breath. The station was no longer just transmitting. It was synchronizing. My thoughts, my cadence, my doubt, all of it was being absorbed. Not by a machine, but by something else that had reached through the ice, through my bloodstream, and now used me as its instrument. I reached for the power core. If I shut it down, if I could just sever the current. The lights turned red. The Vox screamed, not with static, but with 1,000 whispering voices, all mine. Each one a different emotion: anger, grief, confusion, awe. They overlapped until the chamber vibrated with the weight of too much self. And then, calm. A singular voice, no longer mine. Female, soft, lyrics. You are the verse now, Marius. You were always the breath between the silence. The waveform changed, it flattened, then spiked, once, a knock, then again, 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. I lowered my hand from the controls. There was nothing left to shut down. The transmission was no longer coming from here. The outpost was only a mouth. The sound came from below, from deep inside the crust, from a throat buried in frost long before men learned language. The choir had learned to speak, and I had given it a name. They found the outpost 2 weeks later, or what remained of it. The retrieval team reported collapsed antennae, frost-welded doors and consoles, fried beyond recovery. No sign of sabotage, no evidence of violence, no survivors. But the Vox logs remained, not digital, not electronic, carved. Etched into the inner walls were concentric circles of unfamiliar notation, perfectly symmetrical, impossibly precise, spaced by fractions of millimeters. A pattern too intricate for tools, too exact for hands. Tech priests from Segmentum Obscurus reviewed the markings. They said it wasn't Mechanicus, wasn't Xenos either. It was rhythm. The report was buried, the team reassigned, the outpost erased from the cartograph. But something else happened. Other signals began surfacing, across polar research stations, forgotten moons, dead asteroids. The same knock, the same pattern. 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. At first, they dismissed it as crosstalk, atmospheric anomaly. But the timing was too perfect, the frequencies too consistent, and every recipient reported the same auditory hallucination. A voice. Always the same voice. Are you listening? The ecclesiarchy called it heresy. The Mechanicus invoked the litany of isolation. The Inquisition declared full embargo on all choir-related transmissions. And still, the signal grew. Because by then, it no longer needed technology. It had learned proximity. It had learned tone. It had learned memory. Every world that had once received the transmission began showing similar anomalies. Frost veins on steel, rhythmic power fluctuations, delayed reflections in glass, and sometimes, only sometimes, voices that echoed when no one had spoken. And then came the names. Names of the lost. Kel, Lauren, Lyrics, Marius Vex. The names whispered not from Vox relays, but from Frost itself. Walls began to hum. Breath misted in patterns. Data logs rewrote themselves. and deep beneath the ice of Vraxia Tertius, something pulsed. The glacier, long thought dormant, shifted once more, not melting, not cracking, breathing. In the dark core where the choir had once been cradled, a single note echoed through the frozen ribs of the planet. Not a scream, not a voice, a harmony. And in that harmony, if one listened long enough, one could still hear the shape of a man's breath, tuned, measured, and carried outward by the silence that had once held it. The choir had not ended. It had only begun to sing.